Clad with these, the race of man assumed dignity and authority. It was then no longer the mere gardener of earth, or the shepherd of her flocks. It carried with it an imposing and majestic aspect. It had a pedigree and illustrious ancestors. It had its gallery of portraits, its monumental inscriptions, its records and titles. This was all over, now that the ocean of death had sucked in the slackening tide, and its source was dried up. We first had bidden adieu to the state of things which, having existed many thousand years, seemed eternal. Such a state of government, obedience, traffic, and domestic intercourse as had moulded our hearts and capacities as far back as memory could reach. Then to patriotic zeal, to the arts, to reputation, to enduring fame, to the name of country we had bidden farewell. We saw depart all hope of retrieving our ancient state, all expectation except the feeble one of saving our individual lives from the wreck of the past. To preserve these we had quitted England. England no more, for without her children, what name could that barren island claim? With tenacious grasp we clung to such rule and order as could best save us, trusting that, if a little colony could be preserved, that would suffice at some remoter period to restore the lost community of mankind. But the game is up. We must all die, nor leave survivor nor heir to the wide inheritance of earth. We must all die. The species of man must perish, his frame of exquisite workmanship, the wondrous mechanism of his senses, the noble proportion of his godlike limbs, his mind, the throned king of these, must perish. Will the earth still keep her place among the planets? Will she still journey with unmarked regularity round the sun? Will the seasons change, the trees adorn themselves with leaves, and flowers shed their fragrance in solitude? Will the mountains remain unmoved, and streams still keep a downward course towards the vast abyss? Will the tides rise and fall, and the winds fan universal nature? Will beasts pasture, birds fly, and fishes swim, when man, the Lord, possessor, perceiver, and recorder of all these things, has passed away, as though he had never been? Oh, what mockery is this! Surely death not death, and humanity is not extinct, but merely passed into other shapes, unsubjected to our perceptions. Death is a vast portal, and higher road to life. Let us hasten to pass, let us exist no more in this living death, but die that we may live! We had longed with inexpressible earnestness to reach Dijon, since we had fixed on it as a kind of station in our progress. But now we entered it with a torpor more painful than acute suffering. We had come slowly, but irrevocably, to the opinion that our utmost efforts would not preserve one human being alive. We took our hands therefore away from the long grasped rudder, and the frail vessel on which we floated seemed, the government over her suspended, to rush pro foremost into the dark abyss of the billows. A gush of grief, a wanton profusion of tears, and vain laments, and overflowing tenderness, and passionate but fruitless clinging to the priceless few that remained, was followed by languor and recklessness. During this disastrous journey we lost all those, not of our own family, to whom we had particularly attached ourselves among the survivors. It were not well to fill these pages with a mere catalogue of losses. I cannot refrain from this last mention of those principally dear to us. The little girl whom Adrian had rescued from utter desertion, during our ride through London on the 20th of November, died at Auxerre. The poor child had attached herself greatly to us, and the suddenness of her death added to our sorrow. In the morning we had seen her apparently in health. In the evening Lucy, before we retired to rest, visited our quarters to say that she was dead. Poor Lucy herself only survived till we arrived at Dijon. She had devoted herself throughout to the nursing the sick, and attending the friendless. Her excessive exertions brought on a slow fever, which ended in the dread disease whose approach soon released her from her sufferings. She had throughout been endeared to us by her good qualities, by her ready and cheerful execution of every duty, and mild acquiescence in every turn of adversity. When we consigned her to the tomb, we seemed at the same time to bid a final adieu to those peculiarly feminine virtues conspicuous in her. Uneducated and unpretending as she was distinguished for patience, forbearance, and sweetness. These, with all their train of qualities peculiarly English, would never again be revived for us. This type of all that was most worthy of admiration in her class among my countrywomen was placed under the sod of desert France, and it was as a second separation from our country to have lost sight of her for ever. The Countess of Windsor died during our abode at Dijon. One morning I was informed that she wished to see me. Her message made me remember that several days had elapsed since I had last seen her. Such a circumstance had often occurred during our journey when I remained behind to watch to their close the last moments of some one of our hapless comrades, and the rest of the troop passed on before me. But there was something in the manner of her messenger that made me suspect that all was not right. A caprice of the imagination caused me to conjecture that some ill had occurred to Clara or Evelyn, rather than to this aged lady. Our fears, for ever on the stretch, demanded a nourishment of horror, and it seemed too natural an occurrence, too like past times, for the old to die before the young. I found the venerable mother of my Idris lying on a couch, her tall emaciated figure stretched out, her face fallen away, from which the nose stood out in sharp profile, and her large dark eyes, hollow and deep, gleamed with such light as may edge a thunder cloud at sunset. All was shrivelled and dried up, except these lights. Her voice, too, was fearfully changed, and she spoke to me at intervals. "I am afraid," said she, "that it is selfish in me to have asked you to visit the old woman again, before she dies, yet perhaps it would have been a greater shock to hear suddenly that I was dead, than to see me first thus." I clasped her shrivelled hand. "Are you indeed so ill?" I asked. "Do you not perceive death in my face?" replied she. "It is strange, I ought to have expected this, and yet I confess it has taken me unaware. I never clung to life, or enjoyed it, till these last months, while among those I senselessly deserted. And it is hard to be snatched immediately away. I am glad, however, that I am not a victim of the plague. Probably I should have died at this hour, though the world had continued as it was in my youth." She spoke with difficulty, and I perceived that she regretted the necessity of death, even more than she cared to confess, and she had not to complain of an undue shortening of existence. Her faded person showed that life had naturally spent itself. We had been alone at first, now Clara entered. The Countess turned to her with a smile, and took the hand of this lovely child. Her roseate palm and snowy fingers contrasted with relaxed fibres and yellow hue of those of her aged friend. She bent to kiss her, touching her withered mouth with the warm, full lips of youth. "Verney," said the Countess, "I need not recommend this dear girl to you. For your own sake you will preserve her. Were the world as it was, I should have 1,000 sage precautions to impress, that one so sensitive, good, and beauteous might escape the dangers that used to lurk for the destruction of the fair and excellent. This is all nothing now. I commit you, my kind nurse, to your uncle's cure. To yours I entrust the dearest relic of my better self. Be to Adrian, sweet one, what you have been to me. Enliven his sadness with your sprightly sallies. Soothe his anguish by your sober and inspired converse. When he is dying, nurse him as you have done me." Clara burst into tears. "Kind girl," said the Countess, "do not weep for me. Many dear friends are left to you." "And yet," cried Clara, "you talk of their dying also. This is indeed cruel. How could I live if they were gone? If it were possible for my beloved protector to die before me, I could not nurse him. I could only die too." The venerable lady survived this scene only 24 hours. She was the last tie binding us to the ancient state of things. It was impossible to look on her and not call to mind in their wonted guise events and persons, as alien to our present situation as the disputes of Themistocles and Aristides, or the wars of the two roses in our native land. The crown of England had pressed her brow, the memory of my father and his misfortunes, the vain struggles of the late king, the images of Raymond, Evadne, and Perdita, who had lived in the world's prime, were brought vividly before us. We consigned her to the oblivious tomb with reluctance, and when I turned from her grave, Janus veiled his retrospective face, that which gaze on future generations had long lost its faculty. After remaining a week at Dijon, until 30 of our number deserted the vacant ranks of life, we continued our way towards Geneva. At noon on the second day we arrived at the foot of Jura. We halted here during the heat of the day. Here 50 human beings, 50 the only human beings that survived of the food-teeming earth, assembled to read in the looks of each other ghastly plague, or wasting sorrow, desperation, or worse, carelessness of future or present evil. Here we assembled at the foot of this mighty wall of mountain, under a spreading walnut tree. A brawling stream refreshed the green sward by its sprinkling, and the busy grasshopper chirped among the thyme. We clustered together, a group of wretched sufferers,